Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Bible in Order Faith Friday special edition here with our brother Bruce Van Natta. Bruce, I am so grateful that you are here. You had a ministry in which you were ministering to diesel trucks at one point, and God called you out of that into ministering to the human soul. And I'm so grateful. We have so many things in common, from similarities from our childhood and from similarities in the way that we were called from the trucking industry. I told you I drove a garbage truck for 7
Yeah.
years and drove over the road for a little bit, but that was basically my 20s. And now here we are together doing this. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Well, David, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my testimony with your people.
Absolutely. It's such an honor. One of the things that I've heard you say in the past that really impacted me was that you were a believer, you were going to church,
Hmm.
and yet you still had some struggles. Like you weren't completely set free in every area of your life. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us can really relate to that. I know I can relate to that. I mean, I feel like I'm doing well now, in case anybody's wondering, but for a long time I struggled with alcohol, struggled with some other things. Would you mind just kind of starting us off with your 20s and how you were doing in the years leading up to this accident that changed your life?
Well, David, I think a lot of people struggle with a lot of stuff, and especially in the church, uh, it is a kind of a thing where people don't maybe talk about it as much as they do outside of the church, or um, you know, nobody wants to air their dirty laundry or their junk, I guess, for other people to see. To just start in the 20s probably wouldn't do it justice. You mentioned our childhood. I think this is what I found and what I've seen. A lot of people, I would actually even say more than a lot. I would say most. I'm no doctor. I'm no psychologist. I'm no anything. I'm just a guy that is, trying to pay attention to what's going on around me. And from what I've noticed, people with addiction issues, those types of issues, from what I've seen, had some issues in childhood. It seems like most of the time people with addiction issues and stuff like that going on in life, the underlying root cause is some kind of brokenness, some kind of woundedness, some kind of pain that they're trying to medicate. And a lot of times that pain comes, it seems, through our family, our friends, childhood times, whatever, early adulthood, as you mentioned, 20s. These things come and they hurt us, and we try to make the pain go away. And the world has so many different ways, and it says try this, and it dangles a carrot in front of you, like try this little thing, this will make the pain go away, try this medication, try this, try that, drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, gambling, being busy, fill in the blank, whatever it is to make somebody not think about the bad stuff that they've gone through, or not think about what's currently going on in their life, just to escape that reality, if you will. So people fall into addictions and all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, so I mean, I had a dysfunctional home that I grew up in. Um, Physical and verbal abuse. I was repeatedly sexually abused by some babysitters. I came from a drug and alcohol family home, and so I picked that stuff up at a young age, just like my parents did, to medicate the woundedness inside of me. And basically, you copy what other people are doing in your environment, and a lot of times, and not to say that I can't blame my life on my parents by any way, shape, or form. I make my own choices. We all do. We make our own decisions, but the environment we grow up in does color us for sure, and lead us and guide us in a certain direction or path. And so my path, I picked up drugs and alcohol and uh, pornography, all kinds, like I said, all kinds of addictions, and those things never do give us peace. They never do work. I mean, that's the whole. It's like the cheese in the mousetrap. The mouse goes for the cheese and realizes, wow, they've just been caught, and it's now it's painful and it's yucky. So that just pretty much describes my life. I was just looking for something to make me feel better, and I just went from thing to thing to thing, and everything that this world has to offer is hollow and fleeting. And like a lot of people, I thought I'm going to get married and make the happy family I didn't have as a child. And so then, you know, I God sent me, God literally sent me the wife that I have. And within a short period of time of being married, I thought there must be within 6 months of being married. I thought there's something wrong with this woman because I'm not happy.
Mm.
And so many people, I think, even in Christianity, so many Christians think that the right husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, is going to complete them, make them whole, make them happy, fix their junk, and everything's going to be great. But if we put that kind of responsibility on a husband or wife to try and complete us, make us whole, make us happy, take away our junk, our baggage, we've just put them in a position they could never possibly uh, do. We just
Yeah.
put a responsibility on they can't ever accomplish. They can't fix our junk. Nobody can. Only God can do that. And so I think that's the reason why divorce rates are so high, even in the church, because we get disappointed and think, oh, I'm still not right. I'm still not happy, and I thought I was going to be once I got married. And so again, like a lot of the people, I thought once I get married, I'll make the happy family I didn't have. But I brought all this baggage into the relationship. She brought her baggage. So now you have two people with their own baggage, and you get married and you got to try and sort through that baggage and that junk. And so again, that I love being married. I would not want to be single ever again. The Bible says God gives us, he that found a wife has found a good thing. We know that's his first covenant. It's a gift, but it's also work. It's not easy, and God teaches us a lot about ourselves in that partnership of marriage. And so I thought that was going to make me happy. It didn't. Obviously the drugs and alcohol and sex, pornography, all that stuff, that all fell flat. That didn't work. It's all fleeting. It goes away so quick. And then getting married, and then rolling up into my late 20s, I thought having kids. We're gonna. I made my wife all these promises that I wasn't going to be a drug and alcohol parent like I grew up with, but I couldn't keep any of those promises. And I love my children. I have four adult children, but they can't fill up a God-sized hole. And again, I was just going through all the motions and steps of what I thought could fix me. And I got into my late 20s, and I only had one thing left. I basically had exhausted everything I could try to make me feel better. And the last thing I had left in my mind, I thought, was money. So I had a six-figure income that I thought could make me happy. And when I achieved that at 29 years old, uh, I remember my 30th birthday being very, very disappointed that I was still absolutely miserable, even though I was making the money I thought could make me happy. And
Mm.
yeah, we were going to buy a new house or build a new house and get a new car and go on vacations and do the stuff that money can do. But I was still totally miserable inside. So God was always there in my life, calling me. And not that I can say I grew up. My parents definitely both believed in God, but we weren't church people. I didn't grow up in the church by any shape or form. Christmas or Easter would be the only time we would ever go to church. So again, I brought lots of baggage into our relationship. God was always there in the background trying to call me. My wife um, started working at a church. Like you said, I became active and involved in church because my wife was. And but yeah, still, with my baggage. And I think now that we've been in ministry all these years, what, 17 years or whatever it is, I guess, it's interesting because when I speak at prisons and jails, at those type of locations, I really enjoy it. I feel it feels right, and a part of it is because they, the people in those places, don't try to act or pretend that they don't have problems. They're
Mm.
just, hey, they're in jail. Obviously, they got some kind of issue. There's something going on, and if I'm there talking to them, there's no way to get around that. So that's like the elephant in the room is out on the table. Like, okay, yep, we got some issues. We're here. You go to speak in churches, and people put on their happy church face and they play pretend and do the
Yeah.
hypocrite thing and say, "Oh, I've got no issues. I've got no problems."
Hmm.
And the husband and wife could have just been in a huge fight on the way to church. They could have been swearing at each other and yelling at the kids, but they show up and they put on their happy face and pretend like they got no issues. And that's my biggest struggle with churches, because a lot of times it comes off to me, fakey, and they don't want to admit that they've got issues like everybody else.
Yeah.
When we all have issues, Jesus said, in this world you struggle, you have trouble, you have tribulation. We talked about earlier. That's the things that happen to us. But we know from John and other places, we've all sinned, we all fall short. And I guess for me, some people are able to see their issues, and I guess mine maybe are so big it's impossible for me not to see my issues. So I have to come from a place that, look, if God would love on me, if God would be good to me, if God would save me and do the miracles that He's done in my life, then I truly believe He would do it for anybody, because I know I'm the least
Mhm.
deserving. And when Paul said, chief of sinners though I be, I can definitely resonate with that. I feel that. I know that I've got so much more work to do to be who God has called me to be. Um, and yet, in His uh, kingdom and His plan, He chooses to use broken people and to continue to tell people about Him and propagate His kingdom and do His kingdom work. He uses broken vessels because we're all broken. And
Yeah.
I've run into people who say they don't sin, act like they're sin free. Maybe I think they sometimes they even believe they're sin free, and to me that's delusional. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm just so messed up,
Yeah.
but to me it's like, if you say you don't sin, man, you've got issues, because
Yeah.
I think we all do. Jesus said, in this world, you're gonna have the trouble and tribulation, but He also says, I've given you, we read in the Bible that His mercies are new every morning. He didn't say once a week on Sunday morning for the Christians. I'm gonna, because you only need it like once a week. No, He says, my mercies are new for you every morning. And I don't think He'd tell us that His mercies are new every morning unless we needed it every day.
Right.
So that's
Right.
where I come from. I mean, that's my
Well, when
my
when would you
con.
say that you became a Christian? Does that, I mean,
You
some,
know, yeah, this is and again, some people would disagree with this. I had an encounter with Jesus at 5 years old, and I believe that's when I became a Christian at 5 years old, when I had an encounter with Jesus. My life didn't look like it. You couldn't have said by looking at me that I was a Christian, but I definitely knew that Jesus was real. He let me feel His love, and I believe I've been in a type of relationship with Jesus since I was 5
okay.
myself.
All right. Um,
I had so just to in case, so people are probably going, what does that mean? What does He look like? So I said I was repeatedly abused, molested. These babysitters repeatedly molested. I didn't tell my parents, as a lot of children are manipulated not to tell. Somewhere during that time in my life, I went to Sunday school one time because I was babysat by my grandpa and grandma, my dad's mom and dad. I heard the story of Jesus in the Sunday school class that day. The only time I went to Sunday school my whole entire childhood. Once. Only time, once. Um, he told the story about Jesus in a place. The parents are bringing their kids to have Jesus hug them, bless them, touch them. The disciples get mad. They say, get the kids out of here. Jesus has more important stuff to do than mess around little kids. Jesus rebukes His disciples and says, no, let the children come unto me. We're coloring this picture, and the Sunday school teacher tells, like the 3 kids in the Sunday school program, little small country church in the middle of, rural Wisconsin. And he tells us Jesus loves kids. We're calling a picture of a bearded guy hugging kids around this table. And he's telling about Jesus. I had heard the word Jesus a million times. I didn't know it was a person. I thought it was a swear word. And he's telling me about, as a 5-year-old, he's telling me about the concept of God, that Jesus is God, and all this stuff. And I remember, like, I guess now I would know His hope was rising up inside of me. But then he went too far, as Christians we sometimes do, and he said something along the lines of, or what I perceived him to say, something along the lines of, that Jesus loves kids so much He protects them and prevents harm, or something along those lines. And I remember thinking, pushing the basket away, and then pushing the piece of paper away and going, it's a made up story. It's a lie. Because if what you're saying is true, then why hasn't Jesus protected me?
mhm.
I've been protected. So now it's a lie. I pushed it away. Uh, Several months went by. One particular night, bad night is happening in my life. And in the middle of this fear, shame, yuckiness, I'm alone in a bedroom, and I call out and I said, what comes back to my mind is a story of what the Sunday school teacher said, and as a doubting Thomas laying on top of the bed, I simply said, as like a 5.5-year-old kid, Jesus, if you're real, prove it. I mean, I'm still I still got the same skeptic attitude that I've had my whole entire life. Nothing has changed as far as my personality. I'm the biggest skeptic in the room, which is, I think, God's sense of humor. And I just said, Jesus, if you're real, prove it. Come and hug me like you did the kids in the story. And Jesus, I didn't see him, but I got a physical hug. And in my family, we didn't get hugged. I got picked up off the bed, physical arms were wrapped around me, and I literally fell asleep in those arms in that love. I'm 50 some years old, and I've never again ever experienced love to
Wow.
that depth, to that purity, that magnitude again in my life. So as 5.5-year-old kid, Jesus hugged me. I woke up the next morning after falling asleep in his arms that night. I woke up the next morning and I just said to myself, wow, there is something to this Jesus thing, because I
Hmm.
know what I said when I said it, and I know what happened. And I said, if you're real, prove it. He proved it. So for me, starting at 5.5 years old, I've just known Jesus is real. Um, Interestingly, though, I have to admit, and I haven't been good about admitting this. I've kept it as kind of a secret most of the ministry, but just in the last couple of years, I've been feeling like I need to admit this. Uh, I spent most of my life mad at God because I felt abandoned by him. I knew he was real when he hugged me, but then it's like, why did you leave me?
Mm.
Why did you leave me in this yuckiness, in a home that there's so much brokenness and so much pain? If you're so good, why did you leave me here like this? And so I've spent a lot of my life not questioning. Some people question the is God real or not. I guess I've never questioned that since I got hugged by him. I know he's real. My question has been, is he trustworthy? Can I really trust him? Is he good? I know I felt the love, but hey, you left me here. So I've always had that struggle for me in the back of my head. Um, so yeah, I mean, you know, that's, that's what affected me. That's what impacted me. That's what made me believe in Jesus. But it's been an interesting relationship because of dynamic, because of how it came to be,
Mm.
how I first experienced him, I guess.
Bruce, if Jesus is Lord and Savior,
Hmm.
um, he's friend and master.
Yeah.
At what point did you submit to his leadership?
You know what? Uh, David, I guess I'm just going to just here's just pure honesty. Part of me struggles with maybe rebellion. Part of me struggles with submitting. Not maybe, no, there is a part of me that definitely struggles with rebellion, definitely struggles with submitting to anything or anybody. So, I mean, I guess that's my daily struggle, my daily battle. Really, where he's supposed to be Lord of our life, and I think our human nature wants to be Lord of our life.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think for me, it's literally a daily struggle. Who's gonna steer the
Yeah.
car? Who's gonna
Yeah.
steer the ship? So I I'm not gonna I can't even sit here and tell you, oh, a lot of people give a date and said, oh, Jesus has been Lord since you're here. I I know Jesus hugged me at 5. I know I've been in a relationship with someone, and I know different parts, different times. I struggle with submitting to his lordship, I guess, in certain areas. Here's the thing. I find it interesting that people can like say, let's say a Christian, and I can, I'm not gonna cheat on my wife. I'm not gonna kill anybody, but I'm not gonna tithe. So maybe they don't submit to God in the tithing area, or maybe they can tithe, but they say, I'm not going to read your Bible. I mean, everybody has got these weak areas, these blind spots where we hold the reins tighter in our life. And I guess, I could tell you, oh, hey, David, I haven't, the last time I did cocaine, Halloween 2005, the last time I got drunk, very beginning of March 2006, I drank alcohol. I can go through and tell you that stuff, but yet there's other times, other places, other things where I haven't. So um, the truth is, as a Christian, our struggle, I think, is to daily submit to His lordship.
And
For me, I mean, that's my struggle. I
I,
don't know.
they say that the trouble with a living sacrifice is it keeps crawling off the altar.
Yeah,
So that's,
exactly.
yeah, I appreciate you
Yeah,
being real with that.
yeah,
Can you talk a little bit about the days leading up to your accident where you died? I mean,
yeah,
you died a couple times that day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
your wife you guys were a little bit at odds because she was maybe
Hmm.
feeling a stirring from the Lord to move into
Absolutely, yeah.
ministry, and you were um,
Yep. So
just
my accident
wrestling.
happened on Thursday. Yeah, back to my submission thing. My accident happened on Thursday, November 16th. I started work. So I did a mobile repair service. I had a diesel repair business where I just traveled around the state, Wisconsin, where I live. All my tools on that truck, and I would just show up at the job sites and fix the stuff. And so that week, um, Tuesday the 14th, I had finished up another little job and went to this job site, which is about an hour south of our home here. And it was a logging truck. I had taken it apart, diagnosed the problem, taken it apart, got home really late. I typically work 12s, and came home. My kids were already in bed. Lori had saved me a plate of supper, sat down at the table, took off my greasy boots, just sitting there, just beat after 12 hours of heavy equipment work, just eating. And she starts in this conversation about, at this point, I've been completely sober for a year. We've been doing small groups at our house, Bible studies at our house, different things God has been using us in ministry. As you mentioned earlier, those people had already come and prayed for me to be set free from drug and alcohol abuse and all that, addictions. So we're a year into that, and I get home that night, and Lori says, I know, everybody knows we're called to full-time ministry. Pastor knows it, our pastor. Um, the people at the Bible studies that you lead, everybody says it. You're obviously called to full-time ministry. And she just kept on it, and she says, let's sell the business. Let's just, because we owned our own business, let's sell the business and just go into full-time ministry. And she just kept on and on and on and on, and she wouldn't let up. And we got in a fight, we got in an argument, and I just told her, just back off, just leave me alone. And she stood up. I tried to pull a power play. I slammed my fist on the table and I yelled at her. I said, shut up, just leave me alone. And she stood up. She put her finger on the end of my nose. And 3 times she said, Bruce Van Natta, what is it going to take before you're obedient to God? And 2 days later, the accident happened. I had started working on that truck that day on Tuesday the 14th. And on November 16th, at the end of the day, that truck that I was working on, I guess I can go right into it if you'd like. I can go right into that testimony right now, David. But yeah, so I was finishing that truck up that day. We got to the end of the repair. As I mentioned, I did engine repair, and this one had a coolant leak, antifreeze leak. I was working with their mechanic, somebody that I'd known for a long, long time. Just two of us working in the shop that day. And so if you were to big rectangular truck garage shaped like like a shoebox or something, that it's Peterbilt is a brand of semi truck. It's a conventional or long nose. It's got a hood. So this big Peterbilt logging truck is backed into their equipment building. The hood is open. My service truck backed up to it. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I've been working on this thing with this other mechanic. We get to the end of the repair, and we're going to start the repair to start the engine to make sure that the repair is good and it's not leaking coolant anymore. So for anybody listening, if you were to get on your knees and look from the front of the back on one of these big Class 8, big trucks, there's usually a big front bumper. This one had a big chrome bumper, old school. There's a little bit of space between the bottom of the front bumper and the ground. If you were to get on the ground and look from the front to the back, you'd see that the lowest thing on these big trucks to the ground is the front axle typically. So you have the two front wheels that turn when you turn your steering wheel. Out of the middle of those wheels, that axle adjusts or just goes from one side to the other of the truck. And it's just basically a big steel I-beam that carries between 5 and 6 tons of weight. So 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight on the two front tires. The other mechanic's name is Leonard. He had jacked up that axle on the passenger side to remove the passenger side front wheel so that we could get access to the motor. When we started the truck Thursday night, the only thing left to do to finish the job completely was to put that passenger side front wheel back on and the engine mounted air cleaner. Other than that, we were done. Leonard, the other mechanic who worked at that location, he had taken off the wheel, and he had taken off the air cleaner. So he was going to put those two things back on Friday morning. I was called in to do the technical part of the engine. And so, once I was minutes from walking out the door, we're running that thing, I'm putting my tools away. He comes up, taps me on the shoulder, and he says, hey, before you go, he said, would you look at one more thing? I didn't answer him. I looked up at the clock. I remember it was 6:10 I looked at the clock. It was 6:10 p.m. I'd left my house that morning at 6 a.m. I drove an hour to get there. I showed up at the job site at 7 a.m. It's going to be, at this point, I'm already a 13-hour and 10-minute day by the time I get home, and just to finish up that job. And so I'm like, I don't want. I'm done, man. It'll be a 13-hour day for me. I'm done. I don't want to do anything else. So I'm looking at the clock, and he knows, he can read my mind. He can see what I'm thinking. And he says, "Hey, you don't have to fix it." He said, "I just want you to diagnose it while you're here, because again, it's an hour away." He says, "While you're here, just diagnose the problem." And he said, "I've got a dirty spot in the engine. I know it's seeping oil. It had a Caterpillar brand engine, big yellow engine, and big greasy dirty spot, oily spot." He wiped it off. A couple weeks to come back. He said, "I know I'm seeping oil somewhere there. Diagnose where it's coming from, then order the parts, and I'll bring you back at a later time, or maybe it's something simple and you could tell me what to fix, whatever." So this dirty spot in his engine was in the front and towards the bottom of the engine. So Leonard had crawled out from under the vehicle, tapped me on the shoulder, and wanted me to look at that. And there's a tool that mechanics use called a creeper. And it's just this tool that you lay on so that you can crawl underneath the vehicles. And here's the thing with tools. I grew up working with tools, and anybody that has worked with tools for a living, or even as a hobby, will, I would believe, understand and agree with the statement that cheap tools are horrible. You definitely don't want to ever use them. If you are using tools for a living, you would have good tools, because they make all the difference. And I had $100,000 value worth of tools on my truck, all top tools, good quality tools. And this creeper that he crawled off from this truck on, was his, and it was a total piece of junk, something I would never want to use. Just something you would not use in a professional level at all. It was plastic. It was just a piece of junk. And the thing with creepers is, you roll underneath these vehicles, cheap ones, they'll stop every crack in the floor they stop on, every pebble of sand, every piece of gravel they stop. You go left, they want to go right. They're really, really aggravating. I look down at it. I have to go underneath the truck to look at what he wants me to look at. And I remember looking at the creeper and going, I don't even want to get on the piece of junk. It's just going to make me say bad words. So I look in the back of my truck, and here's my really expensive, Snap-on creeper with great big wheels. This little creeper that he had, these little tiny plastic wheels. And I didn't want to take the time to unsnap my creeper, unstrap it. And so I just got on his piece of junk creeper. I laid on my back. I went underneath the front bumper, feet first, feet going towards the back of the truck, right underneath perfect in the center line of the truck. I went underneath. Now I'm completely underneath the bottom of the front of the truck. Basically, the bumper's back behind my head. I'm looking up at the bottom of the running engine, because we're still running the engine from our initial repair. And I'm looking at the area. I think I have a pretty good idea what it is. So I yell out to Leonard, the other mechanic. I said, "Hey, you can get in, shut it off. I don't need it running anymore for what I'm doing here." This Peterbilt had air suspension, as most of them do. Leonard has a wooden leg. He got up inside the truck, apparently grabbed the steering wheel, pulled himself in, whatever. The driver's side tire is still on the ground. The axle is connected to that tire. The axle is being held up on the passenger side by the 20-ton capacity bottle jack. Unfortunately, when Leonard had jacked up the truck, he'd not taken the weight off the jack and put it on safety equipment as blocks or jack stand like you would normally do. He just left it on there, and then the jack. So it had been on the jack for 3 days. It's been running for 15 or 20 minutes. I looked underneath there. I saw that it was on the jack. I saw that it wasn't on jack stands. I thought, it's not a big deal. It's been on there for 3 days. It's fine. So I went underneath there. He gets up inside when I tell him to shut it off. Because it's got air suspension, the whole thing shifts. When it did, as I'm looking up at the bottom of the engine, that axle that I said is the lowest thing to the ground just happened to be right above, let's say, centered above my belly button. And that's just where it happened to be, because of where I was looking at the engine here. And it just so happened that axle turned out right above my belly button, held up by a jack on this side. You got, again, 5 to 6 tons of weight on that thing. So he gets inside the truck. The truck shifts because of the air suspension. I see movement in the peripheral vision of my left eye, and I turn my head just in time to see the truck rocked. It slipped the jack out. The jack is teetering. And before I had time to do anything, that jack shot out like a rocket. And this, 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight went right through the middle on the front of the truck. When it fell off the jack, the axle fell through the middle of my body, just like a blunt guillotine, and crushed my body in half. On impact, when this 5 to 6 tons of weight hits the cement, first it sounded like a bomb went off. It was the sound of the steel dropping and hitting the cement that, I don't know, 10 or 12 inches or whatever it fell, whatever it was. I mean, it was so loud. So it fell through the middle of my body. And the weird thing was in the middle of that metallic explosion, loud noise, I heard liquid. And I didn't realize till later the liquid part was me. And when it fell through me, so it fell through me right basically above my belly button, and then fell through and crushed my body down to where at the end I was approximately 1 inch thick on the left side of my body and about 2 inches thick on my right side, thinner than my spine, because L4, L5 vertebrae, according to the radiology reports, are both spider cracked and D-shaped. The plastic hollow core creeper, his piece of junk creeper, thank God I got on it, because if I would have been on my snap-on creeper, right there's an extra set of wheels, right there's a cross member, and the width of my cross member is 1 inch, so it would have been a pinch point. I would have been sheared. I literally would have been sheared into 2 pieces if I would have been on a steel frame creeper. But instead, because I was on this plastic creeper with no wheels or anything there, it just collapsed, and it collapsed to nothing. So on impact, when the truck fell on me, blood shot out of my mouth. That's the liquid, everything inside. Blood shot out of my mouth on impact when the truck fell through me. Went as a blob on the blob of blood next to the cement next to my head. And the reality of seeing the blood come out, there's a big kaboom, the blood shoots out of my mouth and a big blob goes on the cement. And putting that together in your head and realizing what just happened. And I just called out to the same Jesus that hugged me as a child. And I just said, Lord, help me. And I remember saying it a second time. I'm not sure why. I don't know if I was afraid he didn't hear me the first time or what, but I said the second time, Lord, help me. That's when I looked down. That's when I saw that the axle's on the cement. There's only about 1 inch of space between the bottom of the axle and the cement here on my left, and maybe double on this side, like maybe 2 inches. And the pain was, I can't even tell you how bad the pain was. Everything in the middle, spleen, pancreas, intestines. And this is a big, big thing. I had 5 places, major arteries were completely severed. So the truck is on me. Leonard gets out of the truck. The bumper is back here behind my head. It's on the cement on, let's say, the dry passenger side. The passenger side fuel tank is on the ground, caved in. So he gets out of the truck, and he's looking at me from underneath the gap of the bumper on the driver's side back here behind my head. So I'm looking back at him, and he's looking at me, and our eyes are locked. He never did shut the engine off because the jack had slipped before he could shut the engine off. So we're looking at each other, and he saw my body was crushed in half, and the axle is kind of deep. So when it fell through my body, all I could see was from my ribs up. So the axle's ribs, ribs up is all I had visual. I couldn't see the lower half of my body because of the height of the axle, the depth of it. So I'm looking at just my ribs up with just this little gap on each side. Same thing he's seeing. And when he saw it, he went into shock, and he completely froze. His eyes were huge. It was a look of guilt. He had jacked it up. Now he's a safety equipment. And so we're looking at each other, and he's not doing anything. And I started saying, Leonard, call 911, please. And I was begging him, and he wasn't moving. And it seemed like forever. It could have been 10 seconds. I don't know. I don't know. But it seemed like forever that he didn't move. And I just kept saying, please call 911. He got up finally. He shook out of it. He calls 911. It's in the middle of nowhere. Volunteer fire department. This is pre smartphones. This is still pager days, 2006. So he, I hear him screaming on the phone. He says, a truck found a guy's crushed in half. So he gets off the phone, and I'm telling him, shut it off. So because the running engine, it's just above my head. It's got my vertebrae broken and crushed. The axle's on me. It just hurts so bad because the big diesel engines vibrate. And I just said, shut it off. So he got in, he shut it off. He went and found the jack wherever it had launched to, and he couldn't put the jack. He was trying to figure out how he's going to get the truck off my body himself. He couldn't put the jack back underneath the axle because the axle's on the ground. So he put the jack, as I'm laying underneath the truck, looking to my left side, which is the passenger side of the truck. The axle that's fallen through the middle of my body is attached to the truck with a big leaf spring on each side, which is the suspension. And so as I'm looking to my left, he slides that jack underneath the axle, underneath the big leaf spring. So side view of anybody watching, here's a big curved leaf spring looking at the side of the truck. And here's the frame that comes across, the leaf spring attaches to it, and the axle and the wheel just attaches to the bottom of that leaf spring. So when the truck hits a bump, the leaf spring, it's a suspension. So when he slipped the jack underneath the leaf spring, if this is the curve of the leaf spring, he puts a jack underneath it. You don't want to ever jack something up on an arc. You always want to jack something on a flat so the jack doesn't slip. So I'm looking at it on the arc and I'm saying, don't jack it up there. It's just going to slip. It's going to hurt me even worse. And he says to me, it's the only place I've got. There is no other place. So he's pumping the little handle and it's the jack. I'm watching it slip just like I was afraid, but then it finally caught on a little edge of steel. And now the truck starts going up. So the truck is being lifted off my body, one pump at a time. He's jacking up off my, and now once he gets the truck completely off my body and the axle's off me, I look down, David, and when I looked down, it was the craziest thing. So I've got a work uniform with the name of my company and all that on it, right? And what I saw was at the edge of my ribs, my uniform went straight back towards my back, like my backbone, my spine. It went along the spine and then came back up at my pelvic. And so there was this huge flat spot across the middle of my body where I was literally 1 inch thick on the left, 2 inch thick on the right, and however many inches wide of that was, full width side to side, but like top to bottom, 4 inches or 5 inches, whatever it was, just this ridiculous flat spot. And because there's nothing to compare that to in reality, my brain went into a seek mode, does not compute, and the only thing that it drew up was cartoons. And this sounds crazy, but I went to cartoons from a little kid of Wile E. Coyote getting run over by Acme truck. He's got the flat spot, and that is exactly what my mind pictured when I looked at this. Was like, it's cartoonish. And the next thought was, there's no way you're gonna live. There's no way anybody could live from this. And the fear, and that's when I'm looking over at the jack, and I thought, man, if that jack slips this time, it's gonna fall right on me again. This already hurts bad enough, so I start yelling for Leonard, get me off from this truck, please. I was begging him to get me off of the truck. And what I didn't know at this time was, because I had major arteries severed in 5 places, as long as the truck was on me, it had all those arteries pinched off. But as soon as he removed the axle from the middle of my body, now those 5 places that the arteries are severed are now just dumping out blood internally in my abdomen. So for me, what happened was, when he jacked it up off me, and the axle was no longer pinching everything off, so I've got this incredible pain. But when he took it up off my body, this incredible weakness, there's no other words, just this incredible weakness took over me. That was because I was bleeding out internally. I found out later. So I'm looking over, I see that the jack is barely hanging on. I'm afraid it's going to fall me again. So I beg him to get me out of the truck. He could see I've got this flat spot across the middle of my body. Most everybody's been told you don't want to move somebody with a broken back, or they're going to could be paralyzed. Like, you won't touch me. He's saying, I've called 911. I'm not going to touch you. I'm going in shock. I'm panicking. So I reach back. Just behind my head is the chrome bumper. I grab the bottom of the chrome bumper. If you could picture it, the creeper is flat in the middle. It's busted. It's dragging on the cement, but it's still got the little tiny wheels on each end. I grab the bottom of the bumper. It takes everything I have. I do a pull, and I pull myself out from underneath the bottom of the truck to where my hands are now on the front bumper. So just my, let's say, shoulders and arms are sticking up from the front of the truck. I look underneath the gap of the bumper, and I can see that the axle's now above my legs, close to my ankles kind of. And I thought, man, if that thing slips, it's going to fall on my legs, break both my legs. So I need to do one more push. If I could do one more push, if it does fall, it's going to miss me. So I try to do that second push. What I hadn't noticed right up until that exact second was that I couldn't breathe. My lungs were collapsed, because when the truck found me, it collapsed my lungs. And the trauma, the pain, the craziness, the everything, when I went to do that second push to get my legs so they didn't get fallen on, for whatever reason, I fixated on my right bicep. I had a short sleeve work uniform on, and my bicep was jumping up and down. Like, my arm was shaking so fast, it was like a blur. Like, it was so scary to see my body shaking that amount. It wasn't just moving a little bit. It was like a lot. It was crazy shaking. And it was then I'm fixating on my bicep shaking as I'm trying to do that last push. And I know that I should be able to do this. It shouldn't be hard, but I can't. And I realize I'm doing the, I can't take in the next breath. And there's this reality that, oh my goodness, I can't breathe. No matter how hard I try, I can't take in that next breath. I don't have the strength to do that last push. If it falls, it's going to fall on my legs. And I just feel myself getting weaker, weaker, weaker. And in this chaos, in this pain, I'm in shock. My body's in shock. Part of being in shock is you've got an elevated pulse. And David, you ever notice like when you're really active running around, how you can actually hear your heartbeat sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just don't even hear it, but sometimes for whatever reason, you can like hear it pounding in your ear, whatever. You can hear your own pulse. My body's shaking. I'm gasping for air. I'm trying to get another breath. I've got this incredible pain. I've got this incredible fear. And it's in the middle of all this that I hear my heart racing, pop, 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 just racing like an engine. And just like an engine that gets shut off, I literally heard my heart stop. It just pop, 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 goes from racing, pop, 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 just and literally like on the last beat, kind of like I compare it to an engine. Like when you shut off an engine, you hear the engine pop, 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 pop. On the last beat, on the last thump, when my heart stopped, my spirit left my body and I went up the roof. My spirit went to the roof of the garage. People talk about near death or out of body experiences, heart attack, stroke, drowning, trauma like this, whatever. They say right now, if you look at the percentages, they say there's between 8 and 10 million people right now today in the world who have had a near death or out of body experience. Again, stroke, drowning, heart attack, drug overdose, whatever, but they get resuscitated just like I had this out of body experience. So for me, it just proves what the Bible says is true. We've got a spirit that lives inside our body. So my spirit, when my heart stopped, my spirit left my body. I went up the roof of the garage, I don't know, right inside the roof, 14, 15, 16 feet. And I went from, this horrible pain to feeling the best I have ever felt in my entire life. I struggled with suicidal thoughts at various times in my life, especially when I was a younger man, and always wanting peace, always wanting that just relief from pain, internal emotion, pain. And man, I can't even tell you how good it felt. It was amazing. So I'm up in the ceiling, feeling the best I've ever felt my entire life, looking down this accident scene and the emergency people, EMS. It's a volunteer fire department. The people are showing up, onesies, twosies, and they're all just, I'm watching it all from above and listening to everybody's conversation. They're not going to do CPR because I have this massive chest injury. And so they're just talking about, that it's too late for me, that I've passed. And I don't even know it's me, this guy. They're just talking about that guy. And I'm just watching from above. And on each side of this guy, who turned out to be me. So Leonard, the other mechanic, he's on his knees above me and he's crying. And he's running his fingers through my hair and he's apologizing. I'm hearing him. And he's saying stuff like, I should be the one that's dead, not you. I'm such an old fool. I'm sorry because of the old jack stand issue. And I'm up in the ceiling and I don't care. I mean, I didn't feel bad for this guy crying. I didn't know him in the spirit. I didn't know him. I didn't feel bad for the guy underneath the truck. I didn't feel bad about any of it, even though I'm looking and watching it all, this accident scene. And on each side of Leonard was an angel. Their head stuck up approximately 2 feet taller than his head. So I'm saying they're about 8 feet tall based on him. I've studied out angels now because of this. I've found that there's 290 sometimes they're mentioned in the Bible. And sometimes, just like the ones I saw, they have white shining robes. So I saw these 2 8 feet tall approximate men with white shining robes. Sometimes in the Bible, angels have wings. Sometimes they don't. These 2 angels didn't have wings. Just 2 big, 8 feet tall, very muscular men in white shining robes. They had long hair. The one from the driver's side reaches over, he puts his hands in the middle of the flat spot. The one from the passenger side does the same thing. So I'm watching from above and I go to myself, oh, look, those angels are down there to help that guy because they're touching the middle where he's crushed flat. So I'm just watching, and it didn't seem like a big deal. I'm just watching it all happen. And then everybody coming through the front door, which is behind me as I'm looking from above. And then the last 2 people that came in the wrong door. It was a red-haired lady, found out later. Her name was Shannon. She comes in the back door with this gray-haired guy. So she's the only woman. He's the only gray-haired guy. They come with the driver's side of the truck. She gets down. Leonard gets out of the way. She's now between the angels. I'm watching it all from above. She's feeling for a pulse. And in the passenger's side front corner was a big guy in what I call farmer bibs, the gray with blue striped bib overalls. Big guy, arms crossed, little guy next to him. And he says to her, it's too late, he's passed. because they were there first. And, now she's come, her and this other guy, the last two people to show up to the scene of the accident. She ignores him. She keeps feeling for a pulse. He says it again. It's too late. She says, what's his name? Leonard answers. I'm watching her above. He says, Bruce or Bruce Fernandez. And she starts saying, Bruce Fernandez, come back. She starts slapping. Everybody in the place who all were there before her all stopped talking. And they all turned and looked at her like, crazy lady, what are you doing? And she just kept getting louder and slapping him in the face and saying, Bruce Fernandez, come back, come back. And the only thing I can describe or tell you it felt like is when she was saying Bruce Fernandez, come back. When she said Bruce Fernandez, it sounded remotely familiar. I wouldn't have said, oh, that's me. She's calling me. That's my name. Nothing like that. All I can say was it just seemed remotely familiar to me. And my spirit started creeping down from the ceiling. And all of a sudden, when I got about halfway, it went really fast. My spirit felt like it came in through the top of my body, came into my body. My heart miraculously starts, David. This is no CPR, no medicine, nothing. This woman slapped me in the face saying, Bruce, you're going to come back. My spirit comes back in my body. My heart starts miraculously. And I go from feeling the absolute best I've ever experienced in my life to the absolute worst I've ever felt. And the pain was so over the top. It hurt so bad. And the realization hits that I'm the guy underneath the truck that I was watching from above. And then it all comes back to me. And I just said, oh, 4-letter word that stands for fertilizer. Oh, blank. I'm the guy underneath the truck. This hurts so bad. I hate it. I don't want it. I can't stand it. No. My heart stopped. My spirit left my body. I went back up the roof of the garage, right where I was. I'm back in perfect peace. I can see the angels. I can see the woman above me. I can see it all. Now I know for sure that's me. But this time, a tunnel opened up going out of the roof of the garage. I'd say at approximately a 45-degree angle. People talk about sometimes in these near-death or out-of-body experiences seeing a tunnel with a light on the end of it. That is exactly what I saw. A tunnel right here to my right with a light on the end of it 1,000,000 miles away. I got in the tunnel. I started going towards the light, and I knew then, and I know now. I knew that I knew that I knew heaven was on the end of the tunnel. Jesus was on the end of the tunnel, and I was going to heaven to meet Jesus, and I was happy. I was excited. So I'm rocketing away to meet Jesus, and it felt like I got about halfway in that tunnel, halfway there. It's weird, even though I was obviously in the spirit. I felt G-force like I was in the flesh. I mean, I felt the G-force in the tunnel going towards the light because I was going fast. I could hear the lady. She started saying, Bruce, I'm going to come back. I stopped. I got sucked backwards out of the tunnel, still looking towards the light. Now I'm back in the roof of the garage. I can see the tunnel, see the light on the end of the tunnel. I can see the woman. I can see the angels. I know it's me this time. She slapped me in the face. My spirit goes back into my body. My heart starts. I look on my left and my right, now that my heart had started again. I look on my left and right for the angels that I've just seen twice above, and I can't see them. They're not there in my eyes, my fleshly eyes. And it really scared me because I was thinking, because I'm back in my body and I'm hurt. There's this crazy pain. There's a fear. And I'm thinking, where did the angels go? Like, now is when I need them. Where'd they go? Why'd they leave? So I can't understand why they left. I'm scared. Horrible pain. Like I said before, I don't have words how bad the pain was. And so I'm laying there in this pain and this fear. And right in that craziness, God spoke to me. And I was just sharing with somebody this morning. He was completely calm, not freaking out whatsoever, just totally calm, still small whisper. I know was the Holy Spirit. And he just simply said this: if you want to live, you're going to have to fight, and it's going to be a hard fight. And I thought about it for like 2 seconds. I'm like, screw this. I don't want to live. I don't want to fight. It hurts too bad. I'm out of here. And my spirit left my body. My heart stopped. I went up the roof the third and final time. The tunnel opened up. I got in the tunnel, and I was rocketing away to go meet Jesus, just what I wanted. Halfway there, I hear it. She's saying, Bruce, when I come back, I get pulled back out of the tunnel. I see her. I see the angels again now on each side of my body. My spirit comes back into my body. Third and final time. This woman, Shannon, her face was right here on this side of me. And as soon as I came back in this time, she says to me, Mister, you're on the verge of life and death. What do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? Instinctively, I knew immediately God was talking through this woman, the Holy Spirit. I knew the same voice, the same whisper that had said, if you want to live, you're going to have to fight. It's going to be a hard fight. When God had said that to me, now that same whisper, that same voice is coming out of her. And I know it's God speaking through her. I just knew it right there. And he reminds me, what do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? He knew I had a wife and he knew I had kids, and he had to remind me. I had not thought about Lori or the kids at all. The truck fell on me, and the pain was so outrageous. I didn't think about her or the kids. Now the woman says, what do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? God reminds me through her about Lori and the kids, and I'm like, oh my goodness, they need me. And so, and here's the reason why. If it would have been to me, just about me and just thinking about me, man, I was out of here and not coming back ever, going to heaven and enjoying it and the peace that I've always wanted. But instead, the thought of, okay, back in my flesh, my wife and my kids need me. So she said, stay here, don't leave, keep your eyes open. They ended up med fighting me to our state's biggest trauma center. They called in the head of trauma department from home. He had already gone home for the day. A couple of the guys started the operation. He finished it off. My wife drove down there with some other people, got a ride down there with a bunch of people from our church, the church we went to. And the doctor said he didn't expect me to live through the hour. After he came out, he said, I don't expect to live through the hour. In fact, he said he's been ahead of the trauma at that point for, I don't remember how many years. It was several years. And he said he had never seen anybody. This is our biggest trauma center in our whole state. Said he had never seen anybody's body so badly traumatized and make it to the hospital. He said, I've never seen a body so messed up and make it here. And he said to my wife, your husband must have one hell of a will to fight, but I don't expect him to live through the hour. So my wife and the people from church decided that if the doctor said I wasn't going to live for an hour, that every 30 minutes I was alive, they were going to tell God thank you for every 30 minutes of life. So every 30 minutes I was alive, they gathered that night throughout the whole night and just kept telling God, thank you for every 30 minutes of life. The next morning, my wife went and talked to the doctor and said, I thought you said there's a whole bunch more operations that need to be done. You said he wasn't going to live through the hour. Here we are the next morning. He delayed. He still didn't think I was going to live. He delayed a few more hours, and then some point that next day, I guess, they started operating again. They operated on and off all week, kept me in induced coma for a long time, weeks. I ended up spending, when it was all said and done, I've been in the hospital more than a year in my life. That next year of 2007, I was in and out constantly. I had several operations. Your small intestines, basically, I found, are right beneath your belly button. When the truck fell on me, it destroyed my small intestines. Adults are born with 18 to 20 some feet length of small intestine. Doctors removed all of my small intestine except two pieces that they were able to save that came to less than 3 feet. So I went from 18 to 20 some feet of intestine. Now I've got less than 3 feet. And then a couple months into the hospital stay, one of those pieces died. I hadn't eaten for months. I was being fed intravenously. I lost 65 pounds. I'm dying in the hospital, starving to death. I get in a fight with the doctors, tell them, they had to let me go because I'm type A. I can't hold still. I was going crazy in the hospital. And we get in this big fight. I got in this big fight with the doctors and said they had to let me go home. And they're like, you're not going anywhere. You're going to die here. That's when I found out that they could only keep me alive for another 6 months to a year at the very most before I died in the hospital. God woke up a guy from across the United States from on the other side and said, fly to Wisconsin, pray for this guy. The next morning he did it again, woke him up again at 5 a.m. I said, buy a plane ticket, fly and pray for this guy. I'm going to do a miracle. He did. The second day, be obedient. He bought the ticket. He came and prayed for me in the hospital. God did a miracle. I felt it when it happened. He gave me back approximately half my intestines. Doctors say I have 9 to 11 feet of small intestine. If that miracle wouldn't happen, I would have died a long, long time ago. I would have never left the hospital. So basically, God did many, many miracles, but the two biggest ones being kept me alive for over 2 hours. It was actually over 2.5 hours from the point the truck fell on me until they operated on me. They say if you have one major artery severed, you're going to bleed out, and you don't put a tourniquet on it, you're going to bleed out in 10 minutes roughly. I had 5 places major arteries are severed, and it was over 2.5 hours. So doctors say I'm the only person they can find in the world to have lived after having major artery severed in 5 places. So, and they base that off some studies that were done before my accident. Anyway, so these two miracles, the 5 places major arteries are severed, and then this creative miracle with the intestines, I ended up starting back to where we started. What is it going to take for you to be obedient? I spent all of basically most of 07 in the hospital. We started Sweetbread Ministries January 1st, 2008. I had my last operation in December of 2007. I was actually still in the hospital in January of 08, if I remember right, I believe. And so we started the ministry then, and I've been for the last 16 or 17 years traveling around and sharing this testimony like I did this right now, and just telling people, look, if God had sent angels for me, then he'd do it for anybody. And the first time I was on a big show, television show, the host asked me, he read the bio where the doctor said that I'm the only one that's lived after having major artery severed in 5 places. And he said, so why did God save you if he didn't save anybody else that's had this injury? I was not expecting that question, but the Holy Spirit immediately gave me an answer. He said, turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 1:26. I did. And he said, there it is. Here's your answer. Read it. 1 Corinthians chapter 1:26 and on. It says, basically, I'm going to paraphrase, God chooses things that are not of noble birth, not wise. He chooses the lowly things, the despised things, the things that are not. Verse 29, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. Bottom line, I can't share my testimony with you guys this morning, or whenever you're going to listen to this and say, hey, God saved me because I was a good guy. It'd be a lie. The only reason why God saved me is because he chooses lowly things, weak things, despised things, so then we can't boast and say, hey, look, God saved me because I'm a good guy. No. God saved me because of his mercy. Mercy means not getting the punishment we deserve. So it's his mercy that I'm alive. And it's his mercy I'm alive every day. And I'm going to try and spend the rest of my life sharing this testimony with people and saying, look, God loves us even though we don't deserve it. God, if a God loves a sinner like me, and he'd send angels for a sinner like me, if it's send somebody to pray me. Oh, and I didn't tell you. Shannon, the lady that prayed me back to life, was a 2-month-old baby Christian, and that's what she was doing. She wasn't just slapping me in the face. She was praying in the name of Jesus. She'd been reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for 2 months, only been believing in Jesus for 2 months, and this 2-month-old baby Christian showed up at the scene of the accident and prayed me back to life 3 times.
Wow.
That's the power of the gospel. There it is. I
Raising
mean,
the dead.
somebody that's only had Jesus for 2 months, come on. Right?
That's supernatural Christianity. That's what we need to get back
Amen.
to, right? I mean, Jesus
Amen.
said, go and heal the sick and raise the dead and deliver people and all of these different things. We don't see a whole lot of it, but we need to hear these miracles. It's faith building. It's so good.
Amen. Amen.
Bruce, I gotta ask, how are you feeling now? I mean, physically, do you have any after effects from being crushed by a truck?
I do. Yeah, I've. Hey, you know what? Other than this nasty scar,
Oh wow!
so they got me from
Wow!
here all the way down to here 5 times. That's why it's so wide.
Wow!
If you're close enough, you can see where I had J tubes and G tubes and drainage tubes and all kinds of stuff in here. It's all netted. It was huge, horrible hernias before, but it's all netted except for in the middle. They had to leave an access point. That's why I still have the belly button hernia and stuff. But so I deal with digestive issues. Bottom line, I've had diarrhea now, chronic diarrhea since the day of the accident. I'll, whatever. So I've had that, all the eating stuff and, everything that can. Basically, the doctor said, this is what he told me in that, I had to go through rehab. I had to learn to, because of the trauma, I had to learn to walk again. I had to learn to read again and write again because that was taken from me. I guess oxygen, lack of oxygen in the brain, whatever. It was I had to learn what it was like to walk up steps. I had to learn how to walk up steps again. I mean, all that. It was a long, ugly thing. I have dealt with kidney stones formation, horrible kidney stone formation, where I have to go in and have procedures done pretty much once a year since then. So I deal with some stuff. But Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things, it says all, not some, we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and been called according to his purpose. So God promises to make good come out of bad if we invite him in a situation. And it's easy to say that. It's a lot easier to live it. And it's even harder. I am saying it's a lot harder to live it. It's even harder than that to believe it all the time. So to believe that God will really bring good from the crap, to believe that God will really bring good from the bad things in our life, that's hard to believe, but he does it. And even I'll admit, man, I struggle sometimes, and there's things that happen. I go, just don't understand, God. I just don't get. For me, I don't know. I think I struggle with this. If God can bring somebody back to life, and He did, and He does. There's 8 people in the Bible He brought back to life other than Jesus. If He can bring somebody back to life, then He should be able to heal the emotional and inner wounds that people have. And I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah.
I'm carrying junk and baggage from my childhood, and it's like, God, come on, let's finish this thing off.
Yeah.
So hey, I'm just I'm going to share this testimony, and I'm not going to lie and say I don't have problems, I don't have issues, I don't have struggles, I don't have strongholds. I'm not going to lie and pretend anything. I'm just a normal everyday guy that God has done some incredible things in his life. Absolutely not because of me. That's it. Just because of him and his love. That's it.
You have this experience, and you're able to use it to point people to him. And we all, I think all believers have an experience where God is giving us something to point to use. There's something we all have an experience that we can share with other people to point people
No.
to him. And God bless you, man. I mean, I think you've suffered. I think everybody listening to this would agree you've suffered more than most. You've suffered more than perhaps all of us. And that's what makes your story so compelling. And like before we started the recording, that Greek word, used of a narrow place that hems someone in, the tribulation, the internal pressure, the crushing, like you said, that causes someone to feel like they're confined and restricted without options.
Yeah. Jesus' words, John 16:33. In this world, you will have that word, trouble, tribulation, but take heart, I've overcome the world. We all know what the first part looks like. We can all look the things, the junk, and all have to go, yeah, that's what it looks like to feel crushed. I got a physical crushing. Somebody could get a doctor report saying cancer. They're physically, they're emotionally crushed. Somebody could get the bank's going to come repossess their home, take back their house. They're, financially crushed, fill in the blank. All these crushings. Jesus said, he didn't say maybe.
Yeah.
He didn't say might. And he was talking to believers.
Right.
In this world, you will have trouble. So when I hear believers say, you know what, become a preacher, say, oh, become a Christian, you're not going to have any more problems. Become a Christian, all this thing, it's going to be so great. That's not what Jesus said.
Yeah.
So then when people run into problems, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I thought I was going to be a Christian and I was going to have these problems because somebody lied to you.
Yeah.
They didn't give you the true gospel. The true gospel is, in this world, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have tribulation. Second part, but take heart, I've overcome the world. I'm still trying to figure out what that second part looks like.
Yeah.
But take heart, I've overcome the world. I've seen him do it. What's that look like? Well, I got prayed back to life. What's it look like? I mean, he's done these miracles. The guy gave me a testimony. What's it look like? Saved from addictions. I mean, you can see it, but we still live this life out day by day.
Right.
And that's the struggle. The day by day, keeping the flesh at bay and trying to believe, faith, that God does love us and he does have good plans for us, even when circumstances would say otherwise.
Right. We are definitely not called to an easy road. When Jesus said, if you read the Gospel of John and you reference John 16, so that's later in the book, but those middle chapters, John 6, 7, 8, I'm the bread of life. You have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And people are like, this guy is nuts. And they turn around, they stopped following him. And then he would turn to the disciples and say, you guys going to stop following me too? Like, here's your out. You don't have to follow me.
I love Peter's response when he asked him that question. He says, Lord, to whom shall we go?
Yeah.
You have the words of eternal life. And you read that in context. That was not this huge statement of faith. They didn't get it either. Because you read in the print, the disciples didn't understand either. This is what I think it was. And I could be wrong, but when I read that in context, Peter was saying, this doesn't make sense to me, but there's nowhere else. We've seen you're the one, you're the guy. So you're God. We're going to go to you, even though we don't like it. Even this doesn't taste right. Doesn't make sense. Where else are we supposed to go?
Yeah.
That's really what he was saying.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we all have to get to the point where we can say, you know what? Even though this doesn't make sense, God, even though I don't understand why I'm going through this, even understand how you're going to turn this, this dumpster fire around, God. I don't know how you're going to do it, but it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to believe you're going to do it.
Yeah.
That's faith.
Yeah.
And that's what Peter, really, that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to come to do, even when it doesn't make sense. All right. It's you, God. Let's stick with you.
Even if he kills me, Even if he crucifies me, you know,
Yeah.
I'm going to follow him because there's nowhere else to go. I just want the
Right.
truth, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful that he didn't allow me to stay happy drowning my sorrows with beer or wine or whiskey or whatever. You know, I'm so grateful that marijuana didn't keep me happy enough that I never looked for something deeper. And I'm grateful, Bruce, for you, for your testimony, for your time to come on here today and share this because, man, people need to hear the truth. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy. You had this traumatic, horrific, debilitating, literal death take place. And God restored you from that. Now he's using you for his kingdom purpose to bless people. And it's a miracle. Like, the world just doesn't see it. I mean, you should be all over CNN and Fox News talking about this, but you know, they don't want to put this story out there.
Yeah.
So thank you, man. Thank you
Yeah.
for being here, brother, and sharing. I know that this story, I mean, it's blessed me, and I know it's blessing lots and lots of other people around the world.
You know, we talked about before we got in here about that spot in Revelation where it says they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony.
Hmm.
And it's really what our testimony is, what Jesus has done in our life. It's not like, oh, I did this or you did that. It's what Jesus has done in our life is what our testimony is. So when we can share with other people what Jesus has done in our life, then they can see what Jesus will want to do in their life,
Yeah.
or what he can do in their life as well. So
Yeah.
like you said, it's all about raising faith.
It's all about, yeah, it's all about what does he want to do? You know,
Yeah.
he's the boss. It's his world. We belong to him.
And telling people that he's real, he's alive and well, and he wants to have relationship with us. He really does.
That's equally as hard to understand why he
Yeah,
loves us.
for me, yeah, it's hard to understand because it's like, why? Why would you love me?
Hmm.
I know who I am.
Hmm.
I'm not a good guy. I'm not lovable. Why would you love
Yeah,
me? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, it
it
doesn't.
doesn't.
Yeah. And I think again, that is one of the hardest things for people to grab onto him and really believe that God loves us, to really believe that he unconditionally loves us. That's hard. You know, in the Bible, John is like one of the only ones that really gets it. He, I have to laugh. I said to somebody else on the phone this morning, you know, when he talks about himself, the one whom Jesus loved, it's like, wow, I can't even get close to that kind of thinking yet, but I want to someday.
Me, I'm right there with you. There's somebody listening to this either either today or some point in the future. There's somebody listening who's feeling a lot like you did in your 20s, a lot like I did in my 20s, a lot like I did in my 30s, 40s, you know, that just like need to drown the sorrows. Like, I believe in Jesus. I consider myself to be a Christian, and yet I still have trauma and baggage and hurt that I can't deal with. What would you
Right?
say to that person? Or how would you pray for them? Or
You know, again, as somebody who has lived that and continue to live that, David, the only thing that we can look to is Jesus. And so there's a verse that means so much to me. And I can read this verse. I'll be uptight with myself or be stressing out. And I can read this verse and it literally will feel God's peace come on me as I read this verse because I believe it. He says that it says in the Bible that even now he is perfecting that which concerns me. That means in the middle of my junk, in the middle of my baggage, in the middle of my issues, even now, he is perfecting that which concerns me. Now, for a person to believe that, you have to believe that God really loves you, that he works supernaturally, that he works behind the scenes. And if we can, you know, start to believe that, start to grab a hold of that, and again, takes the focus off of our problem, our issue. Like you said, maybe somebody's having an addiction. Take it off that and put it back on God. So that is my encouragement for anybody. I mean, I'm the type of person, if I start obsessing on a problem, an issue, a thing, it can make me totally spin out. And because then I've taken my focus off of God, I put it on me, I put it on the problem. I'm not thinking positively at that point. I'm thinking negatively. Again, it's like the whole thing with Peter getting out of the boat as soon as he took his eyes off of Jesus when he sank. And so, no matter, I think for any of us, the the encouragement is to keep our eye on Jesus so that we don't sink. Because in this world, we do face trouble, we do face tribulation, and I really don't think any of us arrive
Mm-hmm.
and don't have to face it anymore, or don't have to, battle anymore. I think, it's a lifelong struggle. Work out your salvation with fear and
Yeah.
trembling. It's a day by day thing, and we're each in it. We're each in it. And again, the only thing I could focus on for help for me is God and His love for me.
Bruce, last question. Thank you for staying over. I had no idea what time it was. Goodness gracious, this is the longest podcast I've ever recorded, but it's so good,
Love it.
man. No, it's so good. I'm so grateful. Last question for you: if you could go back and change anything about that day, either no, I'm not going to look at your truck. No, we're going to put jack
Yeah.
stands under that thing before I slide under there. Would you change anything about that day?
I've been asked that question a lot. I've contemplated that question a lot. It was a horrible year in the hospital. It was horrible in rehab after that. The financial ramifications were horrible. There's a lot bad, bad, bad. And if I focus on the bad, man, I don't want to do that. But if I am completely honest with myself, I have seen God touch so many people in the last 16 or 17 years that, yeah, I guess I'd have to go through that again to see that stuff. I would go through that again to see that stuff. I guess if anything I'd want to change wouldn't be that day, it'd be before that, where I'd be obedient instead.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's smart. Would have been a smarter choice. Just be obedient, not have to go through the junk. But that wasn't my choice.
Yeah.
That's not what I chose.
Mm-hmm.
It was my choice, and that's not what I chose. So I chose disobedience. I got a truck.
Mm.
And in God's mercy, He decides to make good come out of it. That's God. I mean, only He can do
Beauty
that.
from ashes. That's what He does.
That's what He does. Yeah, that's what He does.
That other verse you referenced is Psalm 138, verse 8.
Which one?
I don't remember the version that you were quoting from, but it's in the English Standard Version. It says, "The Lord or Yahweh will fulfill His purpose for me. Your steadfast love, O Lord, endures forever. Do not forsake the work of your hands." And
Yeah, it's not the one I was quoting. Actually, it's a different one, but it's much like
okay.
it. The one I was quoting really says that even now, this is the little version, I don't know which version, but even now, He is perfecting that which concerns me.
Okay.
Even now, He is perfecting that which concerns me.
Okay.
And
Maybe that was the New
I
King
stand
James
on
or
it.
something.
I think it is New King James. I don't think it's in that spot. It might be. It might be in that spot. I was thinking it was in another spot, but either way, the verse, I'm not sure about the address, but I'm sure the verse, even now,
Yeah.
He's perfecting that which concerns me. And, it brings me hope and it brings me peace that, no matter how bad my day is spinning out, or no matter how bad I think I've let Him down or I'm letting Him down or whatever is going on, even now, even in the middle of my temper tantrum, even in the middle of this or that, He's perfecting that which
Amen.
concerns me.
Amen. Bruce Van Natta,
Yeah.
thank you. How can people find out about your ministry? How can people access your work?
Yeah. So our ministry, sweetbreadministries.com, is the address to our website. We have a schedule there. We've got some different testimonies there and some things, but pretty much you can Google my name and watch, like you said you did. Google my name and then watch a bunch of different videos. I think there's hundreds
Yeah.
out there probably. But yeah, our ministry, if people would like to, talk to the pastor about inviting us to a church, I'd love to go and share this testimony with new groups when I can, and just encourage them to God loves them and He wants to answer their prayers.
Amen. Amen,
Yeah.
Bruce. Thank you again so much. It's truly been an honor.
You bet. Thank you, David.